Hi guys. Today I wanted to talk about being able to pull yourself out of that stream of thinking, taking a step out of it, because really thinking is not something that we control so much. Maybe we don't in modern society realize that a lot yet. So what's interesting about this is that it's something that seems to happen to us, whereas we seem to think it's something that we do. If you were to look at it, it's similar in the sense of, like, in the movie The Matrix, being plugged in. And in that, people are going about their lives as if they have a choice in what they're doing and why. But really they're not in control. They're plugged into sort of a system, and this is similar to me, how I see all of us going about our daily lives, just thinking, and we assume that we're in it or we're doing it. That's where a lot of judgment of ourselves and others comes from, is like assuming that we're all like steering this wheel in the directions that we want. But it's an easy experiment. Just go ahead and try for for even a minute. Just don't think at all. Don't have any thought pop in. It takes a lot of years of practice and meditation to probably even go a few minutes turning off that stream. But you could even just try only thinking about a certain topic for 5 minutes. Try and only think about a very specific thing for 5 minutes. If you're like me and probably a lot of the world, unless you have specific training, you'll find that you'll all of a sudden be like, whoa, where did I go? Oh, I just started thinking about something else. And then you got to get back on track. I would like to also add that these practices, a lot of people, they don't want to take the time to do them. And the way that I kind of sort of, I guess, talked myself into it a little bit was, imagine if someone told you that if you spent 5 minutes every day just sitting still, or just write a few sentences down about things that you're thankful for today, and at the end of every month you'll get an increase of 20% in your salary. I think so many people would do that. They'd be like, sure. But if you tell people the same thing and you're like, do these things and it's going to increase your happiness, it's going to increase your overall well-being. Like, there's scientifically proven, just even a gratitude journal, after 30 days, there's apparently, I think it's 15 to 20% increase in your happiness. And I have tried this, and it's not a cure-all, but 20% is pretty nice, and it does work. So it's interesting. I think that we're still in an age where we're a lot more lured in by financial reward than by the reward of our own happiness and well-being. So before I get into my method of what I just, again, a lot of these things that I'm coming up with on a weekly basis. Something will work for me 1 week, and then I'll start to dip into whatever, some negative thinking, or just not feeling well emotionally or whatever, and then a new way to work around it or to work through it comes to me. And I think it's nice because it's like having so many tools in your toolbox. It's okay that, something that you tried worked for you for a little bit and then it didn't work afterwards. It's like, we need variety, and, we're so complex. We need different things to work with, different situations. So yes, before I get into the method of how to sort of take a step, what I'm using to take a step out of overthinking, I'd like to talk about how, when you're tackling something about your, mental well-being, or something that you want to overcome within yourself. So I'm going to use the terms like 3D and 5D. So if you're really wanting to heal something, you're going to want to heal it not just on the 3D level, and the 3D level is speaking more to, the physical level, the immediate, our tangible everyday life. That's like the 3D level. And then probably what you've been hearing more and more about is like the 4 and 5D level. I'll just say the 5D level. And there you're dealing more with, you know, the energy aspect, where if you believe in, like, you know, the soul or the spirit aspect and stuff like that. Obviously not so tangible. Often when we make a shift, like say you have the intention that you know, you want to grow somewhere in yourself. You want to get better something. Maybe there's something in your personality or character or behavior that you're like, man, like I'm just, you know, I'm so done with that. Like I'm ready to shift into a new level. When we make that conscious intention and we do start to make that shift, you are kind of going through like a mini awakening through these shifts in improving yourself. And what comes with that, because it is a growth, is you're going to get growing pains. So basically, you have your say current way of being or old way of being on one side. And then you have this intention, this shift that you're working towards. And when we have this intention, this shift, and we're transferring over into it, there's going to be an overlap. But what's going to happen is this old sort of version of you, way of thinking, way of feeling, is it's separating from you, and that's where the growing pain comes from. You're shedding a skin, or you're separating yourself from something that's energetically been attached to you for probably a very long time. And you know, genetically, it could be an energy that's been hereditary in your family, you know, in your ancestry for generations and generations. So that's not an easy thing to shift out of, and unfortunately we're not really taught about this. So we can be like, oh my God, like why am I all of a sudden feeling, you know, so depressed, or, you know, I have all this anxiety, and you know, you just go through one of those dark dips. And it sucks for, you know, it really, really sucks no matter what, but it especially sucks when you don't have any real context of why it's happening, and able to, you know, kind of take that bird's eye view and see what's going on to make sense of it. So it's like, oh, okay, well, you know, phew, like I'm just, you know, that's what's happening, and I don't need to feel so bad about it. If anything, I can feel, kind of take some ease around it, because I know that it's happening for good reason. So when this shift happens, all of a sudden this old energy, this old thinking pattern, this old version of you, because you've made the intention to shift away from it, you're now able to kind of, you know, you're no longer in it. You're kind of almost like reflecting and looking at it. And that can come up as you know, feelings, because now you're not like merged with that anymore. You look at it, or you're still able to resonate or feel it, but it's dying. It's separating, and that's painful. That's like, you know, you're still losing something that was attached. The way I guess I'd like to explain it is like, imagine you did something really embarrassing, and it was caught on film. And while you were doing that really embarrassing thing, you were in it, so you were probably just like, you know, doing the thing, and you weren't feeling so embarrassed in that moment, because that's where you were at in that moment. That's where you were at. But then you later, you know, you saw that video and you were like, oh, you know, it feels bad. It feels bad to see it. So this is kind of what's happening when you're shifting out of like an old version of yourself, or you know, an old pattern, or an old energy field. You're all of a sudden seeing that, and like I said, unfortunately we're not taught this, so we're just you're all of a sudden you're like, oh, I feel like so depressed, or oh, like, you know, you're thinking these thoughts, and you're like, why am I thinking these thoughts? And you're not realizing like it's good. You're separating, and now you're like you're feeling that, and you're seeing it as if it's on its own now. So that's why it's so vivid and it's so like, whoa, because it's no longer like merged with you. It's like kind of separate. It doesn't feel that way. You feel like all you feel is that dark space. I guess it's like if you're sick and you need to, sorry for saying this, like you need to throw up, and it's not fun, and it's like, ugh, throwing up feels horrible, and it's like, what, why can't I just feel better? But if you throw up, you're gonna feel better afterwards, but you have to go through that unfortunate comfort of having to throw up before you can feel better. If I'm going through a dark dip, it's hard to even like, when you're there, sometimes all you can do, like, I can give you all the tips and tricks in the world, but even for myself, sometimes there's nothing you can do. You just go through it, and you say, thank goodness for impermanence, because as many dark dips as we all go through, as long as you're not messing with things that are going to really keep you down on that low. Like if you're going through like one of these phases and you just start binge drinking, or there's drugs, or it can even be just like watching too much of something on TV that's not helping you get out of that, or maybe spending time around people that maybe they're not the best people to be around in that moment, because you need time to yourself during those times to heal. The same way when you're sick, it's better, don't go running around hanging around people and doing bad things for your body, because you got to heal. So as long as you're not doing those things, and you can kind of maybe hold somewhere on the back burner in your subconscious that this dip is happening for a good reason. It's a purging process. That dip will lift, and then you'll have you'll come out of it and you'll start to feel a little bit better, even if it's not like amazingly better. You're not going to stay at that constant low state. And that's kind of the nice time once you start to come out of that real dark dip, where literally, you're like, screw all the tools, screw the meditation, screw all these things. I can't do anything. I'm just going to lay here and feel like crap. That's fine. You do that if you have to do that. Like, totally understand. But you will get you will start to get a little wave of motivation, like to even just get up and go for a walk, or do something different. And it's like you got to jump on that motivation. And I think it's kind of interesting at the time that we're in, because I feel like there is this sort of new level up in consciousness, new earth that's happening for us. And we just happen to be, a lot of us on the planet, having to spend so much more extra time alone. More people are having sort of these mini awakenings, or dark nights of the soul, or however you want to call it. And it coincides kind of nicely with this next step in conscious evolution that we need to take, that people are forced to spend more time alone, and they're also not having to be as part of the rat race, and act as like robotic anymore. Like, people are able to spend more time just reflecting within, and kind of not sometimes really knowing what day of the week it is, or not mattering and stuff like that. I am also going to put here this graph that I've made that shows what I think growth looks like for an individual throughout their mental healing, or it can be spiritual healing, or throughout their lives. And as you'll see here, it's a bunch of dips, but overall it is exponential. Like, it is making a growth upwards, but we're going through dips as we go upwards. And what's happening is, if you look kind of towards the middle or end here, the lower dips are maybe not as low as the lower dips earlier on the graph. And the higher dips are higher than some of the dips that are higher on the graph. But what's going to actually, what's I think often ends up happening is, even if we're like maybe in more of this advanced growth stage or healing stage, when you're going through one of these dark dips, and you can still have some pretty severe dark dips, you are going to come out still a lot more amazing if you allow it and utilize it and heal from it. And that's why it's so important people realize that these dips are they're actually a good thing. Because if you don't realize that, then you really just stay stuck in that energy. You really end up basking in whatever that feeling is, if it's like, depression or anxiety or just judging yourself, all those not so fun feelings. So you go through these dips, and when you're going through them, they feel so bad, and you kind of feel like you haven't made any progress. But if you were to zoom out, you would see that actually you are better off. You are better off now than maybe where you were before. You might not think so. You might think, oh, there were times that were easier, or life was better, and stuff like that. But a lot of people, and I did mention this in one of my other videos, like to say, I wish I knew then what I know now. And that's if you do feel that way, then that is just a great reflection of the growth that you have made in your life, and you should give yourself a pat on the back for that. You've been through a lot of experiences to get to that point. And these intervals in between the lows and the highs, they will get shorter, because as you practice whatever tools that work for you, and as you start to recognize these dips for what they are, and you can have a bit more of a friendlier outlook on them, you come out of them quicker, because you're not needing to bask in them for so long and be like, what's going on, why do I feel so awful, and oh my goodness, it still can feel really can still get really quite sometimes, but it might only end up lasting a few hours or a day, as opposed to weeks, or even, I can imagine even some people for months having to really stay on a low. Okay, so that said, so what's happening on the 3D level when we're making one of these growths or these changes is, so yeah, like I said, on one end, you're making the energy shift. You're separating from old energy in your body, old vibrations. But then what's happening on your physical level is you might start some yeah, you know what, I'm going to think this positive way instead, or I'm going to feel this way about something instead, or this is how I want to look at things. And then all of a sudden the next day you're back to your old way of thinking, and you're like, geez, I guess I didn't really feel so positive about it, or this must be the real way that I think. But it's no. It's just that the way our brains work, we have at any time you learn something, whether it's a sport or anything that you do in repetition, you're building neural pathways in your brain, and the more you repeat that pattern, that your pathway gets stronger. So you really need to be gentle with yourself if you are wanting to shift into a new way of thinking or a new way of being, and you just constantly keep slipping back into that old way. Man, take it easy on yourself, because this is not easy stuff here, and it isn't really common knowledge yet properly on how to deal with these things and what they are and why they're happening. It's still a lot of old approaches for people, and I think there's even a lot of medical society and psychologists and stuff that they want to help so many people, and they work with so many people for so long, and they're just not getting the results that they would like to. I'm sorry, I'm losing light here. My lighting keeps every time. I got to get some proper lighting. Okay, anyways, so yeah. You have these old neural pathways, and this is from what I said at the beginning. We're not so in control of our thinking that we think. So don't beat yourself up if you have this new intention or this new way that you want to start being, and you slip back into that old thinking. It's not really so in our control, and you've got these neural pathways. They're like highways in your brain, and they've just they've been built up and driven on so many times, if anything, and it's like a highway in a loop, just going around in circles, thinking the same thought, thinking the same thing. And when you make that intention to to change the way that you want to think or be. It's almost like you're getting off that highway and you're walking into a field and you're making a new path. And that new path, it's just like, you look back, it's just like smushed grass or hay or whatever. And you got to keep walking that same path until it starts to turn into, eventually, its own highway. And physiologically, the way this stuff works, the way that our cells turn over, you got to think about it, the way our cells turn over and how the body grows and evolves and changes, stuff like that, it takes time. So I cannot stress enough to be like, please, anyone like that is trying to help themselves in any way, be so gentle with yourself. Take it easy on yourself. It is not, you are not the one driving you're not steering the wheel as much as you think. Doesn't mean that you don't have some free will and stuff like that. It's just that you're up against hundreds of thousands of years of evolution and also an energy that's been passed down, and we're functioning here in these bodies doing our best. I feel like I already gave a good example in my last video, and I'm sure I'm going to be coming up with more on how to deal with seeing energies as frequencies. There's a bunch of things that you can do as far as dealing with energy, like just move your body around. Like, movement's good to move it around, but also to help yourself, to help the conceptual mind to shift the energy. It is good to think of them as frequencies, like I mentioned in that video. I'm sure you could look online as to all sorts of ways on how to shift that energy, like people do chakra healing. If that's not your thing, and I'm sure there's all kinds of methods, even for people that are maybe not spiritual or religious or anything like that. So now for my method that I'm currently using to get myself out of that stream of thinking. The thing is with thoughts, and they're so alluring. Like I said, you'll get trailed off and you won't even realize that you got trailed off if you were just trying to think of one thing, or you were even trying not to think at all of a sudden you'll snap out of 5 minutes later, and it's like you were like, I almost like to imagine it like those hypnotic circles, like people just, that's what they have in their eyes when they're thinking, because it's like you're in a trance and you're not in control of that trance. And there's this really cute cartoon called Ronya the Robber's Daughter kids cartoon, and in it she's in the forest, and there's this kind of spirit fog that happens in the forest, and there's these like sort of children's spirits that they try and like lure her in to come into it, but apparently once in the show, once you go into the fog, you can get lost forever. You go crazy. Well, it's kind of a good metaphor, because that's what happens if you get trapped in thinking forever. You can go crazy. So I like to imagine that basically there's like this platform, and for me, because I've watched this show, I do imagine that the thoughts are kind of that fog and around the forest, and this, I'm like, I'm on this platform in the middle of the forest. And when I'm on this platform, like I said, because I'm spiritual, I like to imagine that I'm sitting with, God, basically, the one consciousness, the universe. I don't really have like a physical form that I put to it, but I just know that when I'm, like if say my thoughts are going wild, I'm sitting on this platform, and there's that fog, there's those thoughts that are kind of like they're luring you in, and you take a moment and you sit there, and you have a moment of just peace, even if it's just like a second or two. Doesn't matter. Go back to the thinking, the trance for 5-10 minutes, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, whoa, oh yeah, I was thinking for 5-10 minutes. And then I go back to, okay, now I'm sitting here with this presence, with this, the universe. And it's basically, there's no judgment. That presence doesn't care what I was thinking about, what I was doing, is there's never any judgment. There's always just pure acceptance. You can use whatever you like, you can I mean, you can make it Elvis for all I care, as long as I think it's just nice to imagine that it's someone or something that you can imagine that there will just be no judgment, and that they're always sitting there waiting for you to come out of that stream of thinking, to come out of that trance. And you can do this anywhere and everywhere. You can be walking down the street and catch yourself thinking, and then be like, oh yeah, okay, just take a second to imagine I'm with that. It would be really nice to do it longer, of course, put on some relaxing music and sit in that nice peaceful space with your non-judgmental buddy, whoever that is, whoever you want to make that. Like I said, for me, I consider the God consciousness, because it's very peaceful, that idea to sit with that and to take a breath. And you can do it so that you're thinking constantly all day long, but even if you're just giving yourself like a split second of like, with that, like you're making a break out of that stream, and that's huge. Even if it's just like a split second here and there throughout your day, like compared to spending like decades otherwise not taking those little tiny breaks, you will definitely notice the difference, and you will definitely feel those few seconds of peace throughout your day, which are huge. So I hope this was helpful. Again, I'm sorry for the lighting, and thank you so much for listening. Wishing you all the best.